Okay, in this video what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through the application that's listed in your book. It has a lot of the same functionality as the requested information you're going to do on your lab. So I'm just going to go over real quick what this application does. We're going to start with just showing the information, and then in the next video we'll move to updating and adding and deleting records. So the example in your book is a guitar store, and this is a little different from what your lab requires because it lists the items based on the category that they're in. They're assigned to a category in the database. So there's a guitar category, there's a bass category, and a drums category. And depending on which of these selected, we'll send that information and use it in the query to get the information for just the guitars, just for the basses, and just for the drums. So this is a little bit different than what we're going to be doing, but I just wanted to show it to you so I can walk you through the logic of the code that is included with the guitar shop base. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the code. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to require the database connection, and that's stored in database.php. So let's just take a quick look at that. This is going to be similar throughout the semester. So on database.php, you're going to set up the connection, tell it which database you're going to go to, which server you're going to go to, and what database you're going to use within that server. You're going to send a username and a password that allows the application to connect to the data. And then you're going to check to make sure that a successful database connection was made. So if there's a technical problem, if your database is down or something like that, you don't want the user to get blank results thinking that they've actually made the connection. So what you're going to do is you're going to use what's called a try catch. And a try catch statement says try to do something. And if you do that, then just go about your merry business. But if something fails, then you execute what the catch is, and in this case we're going to do an exception. So they'll try to establish the database connection using the DSN, the username, and the password that we defined up above. If that works, then the application goes ahead, connects to the database, and does whatever the code tells it to. But if there is a problem, it's going to catch it and it's going to create an error message. And in this case right here, it's going to tell it to go get an error message that is stored somewhere else. And in this case, database error.php. So let's just take a quick look at that. So if for some reason you can't connect to the database, then what happens is this file gets included, the style sheet and everything. So it makes it look like the application, your HTML is there and it's styled properly. But instead of showing output, you will show this instead that says what the database is, and then it'll echo the error message that was collected as part of the attempt to connect to the database. So you'll do this on almost all of your applications in this class. You want to make sure that the database is set up, but you also do want to let the user know if there is some sort of a problem with their application talking to the database server itself. So with that said, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to walk you through the code that allows the user to display the different items in the Guitar Shop database depending on which category was selected. So we're going to go over to index.php. We've required our database, and so from our code I'm going to swing down to the actual interface right here and just show you that we are going to echo right here the category name that they selected, and then we're going to process through a record set. So let me go ahead and go back up here and let's look at the code. So we're going to get the category ID that they selected. It'll be sent through as one of the category. So when they click on guitar, it'll send a category ID. Those are being shown right here. That's what this first is. It's going to show the category ID and then it's going to show the category name. And so what happens is this echoes out which ID they've selected. So if they select 3 for drums, then that's input here, and the number 3 is stored in category ID. We have a little bit of arrow checking here, so if that is null or it's false, then they automatically set the category ID to 1. All right, so we have to do a couple of things. We have the first thing for the display, and to actually have them be able to select one, I'm going to skip to this comment right here. And what this does is this just gets all of our categories. So we select all from the categories table, and we order it by category ID. So we prepare the query, we execute the query, we fetch all, and we create a record statement, and we close the cursor. This is pretty much the same steps you'll take to select things from the database. You'll prepare the query, you'll execute that query, and then you'll deal with your record set and close it down. You'll see that repeated throughout. So this gets us all the categories. This gets us the name of the category. So here is where we're actually retrieving the name based on which category ID was selected. So we set up our category. We're going to select all from the categories table, where category ID is equal to what category ID came in. Okay, so that's this one up here. Okay, so then we'll prepare the execute. We'll bind those values to the record that's being returned. Then we'll execute that statement. We'll get our category state, and then we will create our record set here and close the cursor. All right, so then we have to select the objects that actually meet the category name. Okay, so here's where we're actually going to get the information that we're going to display in the table. We're going to display, this time we're selecting from the products table instead of just messing with our category table. And we're going to select from that table where the category ID in the table matches our variable category ID. We're going to put them in order by product ID just for display purposes. We're going to prepare our query. We're going to bind our values to those items returned. We'll execute our statement. We'll get our record set, and we'll close our cursor. So in this case, what we've done is we've created 3 different record sets that we're going to use throughout the functionality to display this information. So with the database work done and all of our data returned to us, let's take a look at what the HTML actually does. So regular HTML, title of the page, the product list. Now in our nav section and the unordered list, let me see if I can bring that back up. We have our 3 categories here. So we need to, these are actually being generated out of the database. So if our store started selling sheet music or guitar stands or amps or something like that, instead of having to redo our HTML for every place in the application, what we would do is we would just be able to retrieve them by assigning new category names in the database. And so that would automatically update. And so what this does is this takes our record set names categories, which is right here. All right. And we're going to loop through them. So in this case, it has returned 3 items. So it'll go through this loop 3 times to display that information. And so what the code does is it's going to echo out the category name. Okay, so this is just for display purposes. And so what it'll do is it'll loop through it 3 times and show each category there. And when it runs out of records in that record set, in other words, it just displayed the third item, it just displayed drums, it reaches the end of file marker from the database. It says no more records to show, and so it drops out of this loop right here and then continues on, closes the list, closes the navigation and the aside section. So the next section is pretty much where your results are coming out. What we do here in an H2 is a display the category name of the selected category. So again, going back to our HTML, the way it displays, when I select drums, this piece of code that we're looking at right now displays the word drums there. If I change that to guitars, notice how it updates that H2 to say what category I'm currently looking at. And so that's what the code is doing right here, is it's echoing out the category name that has been selected. Okay, so let's look at this table structure, because you are going to do something very similar to this in your lab when you display out the technicians and the products. So you're going to open up a table tag. And at the top of the table, you're going to have your headers that show whatever you're going to do. So it's literally going to print the word code, literally print the the label name, and print the name price. So again, going back to our code, it prints code, it prints name, and it prints price. So those things are going to be stable. What's going to change is everything else that shows up in this table. So you set up a loop. We retrieved all the products here that met our SQL statement here. So we said select all of the products that match the category ID that we selected and store them in this record set named products. So then down here, when we get to our table, what we do is we start the loop, and inside the loop we'll have a row, a TR, for each product that's returned. So again, if it returns 6 guitars, 6 things that have the guitar category ID, it will loop through this thing 6 times. So the first time it goes through, it writes the TR tag. It comes into the TD, so this has 3 columns in it, 1 set of TD for each set of data. So in the first TD, you're going to echo out or display from this one product, the first product we're looking at, we're going to list its product code. Then we're going to open up another cell in the table. We're going to echo out the product name of the current record we're looking at in the record set. And then we're going to open up a third TD. They've added a class right here that has to do with the style sheet. Because this is dealing with money, it's going to align it to the right. So just to let you know. So then they're going to echo out the list price of the current product in the record set. I'm going to close the TD, close the TR. So that just made a complete row for the first record. It comes back, there's still another record, so it'll loop and it'll repeat that. It'll go through, create another TR, and it'll keep creating rows in this table until it runs out of records in the products record set. Once it does that, it will close the table and then go ahead and close the rest of the HTML. So the name of the game here really is make sure you open and close your table tags outside of your loop. Again, outside of your loop, you're probably going to have your header information. Once you establish your header information, after that, you're going to make a row using a loop for each record in the record set that you've retrieved. Now, I've had a couple of questions about styling. The styling is generally going to be done here in the style sheet. I don't think I have that open, but what you're going to do is most of your style sheet is going to be done using the border styles. So you might want to review that from the reviews, or you might want to look at some of these files that are included with your database. You're more than welcome to take CSS from another place. You can also do the styles in line if you wanted to. You could go ahead and just do an online style. Whoops, not letting me type for some reason. You could do an online inline style. If I could type, that would be very helpful. Equals border. Let's make it 3 pixels. Let's make it solid, and for some reason, let's make that red. And so if we save that, assuming, no, I'm not saving, let's save it in my HT docs. Not what I needed to do. Well, let me just go ahead and cancel. If you'll look up here, I'm working on it in a different folder. But if we were to save that, that would then change the border around the table, this solid border right here. The inline style would override the external style, and it would turn that red if it were in my local host directory, which it's not. But that's the basics of displaying information. Again, just remember, you do all of your record retrieval up here after you connect to the database. You have to pass category IDs if, in this case, and on your lab, you're going to pass selected IDs later on. And then you get your records for display purposes. You get the record for what category they've selected. You get all of the categories so you can display them. And in this case, you're going to retrieve records for display based on which category of product they selected. So I'm going to go ahead and close that here, but just wanted to point out that your selects and this looping structure right here are going to be the bulk of how you display your records in Lab 2.